Welcome back to the Haunted Lore, where history's shadows meet the unexplained. Today, we journey deep into the heart of Germany, to a forest where the veil between past and present has worn dangerously thin. In the northwestern reaches of Germany lies the Teutoburg forest, or as locals know it, the Teutoburger Wald. This ancient woodland stretches across Lower Saxony and North Rhine-Westphalia like a dark green scar across the landscape. But we're not interested in the entire forest tonight. No, we're venturing into a very specific section, the area once known as the Widowkind-Wälder, named after the legendary Saxon leader who resisted Charlemagne's conquest in the 8th century. Here, where morning mist clings to pine and beech trees like ghostly fingers, where GPS signals mysteriously fail and compasses spin wildly, something walks between the trees that shouldn't exist. The locals call it the Hirschgeist, the stag spirit. And its story begins not with ghost tales or urban legends, but with one of the most devastating military defeats in Roman history. What happened in these woods 2,000 years ago? In September of 9 AD, 3 Roman legions, approximately 20,000 of Rome's finest soldiers, marched into these forests under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus. They were betrayed, ambushed, and systematically slaughtered by Germanic tribes led by Arminius, a Cherusci prince who had once served Rome itself. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, or as the Romans called it, the Varian disaster, changed the course of European history. But the battle itself lasted 3 horrifying days. Roman historian Tacitus would later write that the forest floor was carpeted with bleached bones for decades afterward. The eagles, the sacred standards of the legions, were lost. A shame so profound that Emperor Augustus reportedly wandered his palace at night, beating his head against the walls and crying, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." Archaeological excavations at Calcrease, believed to be part of the battle site, have uncovered mass graves, weapons, and most disturbingly, evidence of ritual sacrifice. Germanic tribes were known to hang captured enemies from trees as offerings to Wodan, their god of war and death. The Romans who survived the initial ambush faced something perhaps worse than death in battle: ritual execution in sacred groves, their screams echoing through trees that had witnessed human sacrifice for centuries before Rome even existed. But here's where history becomes legend. The Germanic tribes didn't just defeat the Romans militarily, they invoked their gods to curse this ground. According to fragments of text discovered in the monastery at Corvey in 1764, tribal priests performed a binding ritual calling upon the Waldgeist, forest spirits, to guard these woods against future invaders. The ritual supposedly involved the sacrifice of a great stag, its blood mixed with that of Roman captives, creating an eternal guardian that would take the form of both man and beast. Why do modern hikers report seeing a creature that shouldn't exist? Fast forward to the present day, the Teutoburg forest is now crisscrossed with hiking trails, dotted with monuments, and visited by thousands of tourists annually. Yet certain areas, particularly the remote sections near the village of Detmold and the Hermann Monument, report an unusually high number of what German authorities classify as unexplained incidents. Since 2015, the Nordrhein-Westfalen Forest Service has documented over 47 reports of encounters with what witnesses describe as an enormous stag with characteristics that defy natural explanation. The descriptions are remarkably consistent: a massive deer, larger than any red deer native to Germany, with antlers that witnesses claim seem to glow with a pale light. But it's the creature's behavior that truly unsettles those who encounter it. Unlike normal deer, which flee at the first sign of humans, the Hirschgeist approaches, it watches, and according to multiple witnesses, it transforms. Markus Brenner, a software engineer from Hamburg, submitted footage to the Forest Service in March 2023. His GoPro camera, recording his morning trail run, captured 23 seconds of footage, showing what appears to be a large stag standing approximately 50 meters away in the morning mist. The creature remains perfectly still for the first 15 seconds. Then, and this is where the footage becomes truly disturbing, appears to rise onto its hind legs. The video cuts out immediately after, the file corrupted beyond the 23-second mark. Brenner's GPS tracker showed another anomaly. His route, which should have been a simple loop trail, showed him somehow covering the same stretch of forest 3 times, despite his insistence that he never backtracked. The timestamps on his device showed these impossible loops occurring within the same minute, a physical impossibility that tech experts have been unable to explain. What ancient rituals still echo through these trees? To understand the Hirschgeist, we must understand the spiritual landscape it inhabits. The Teutoburg forest wasn't just any woodland to the ancient Germanic tribes. It was sacred ground, a liminal space where the world of men touched the realm of gods. The Cherusci, the Bructeri, and other tribes who called these forests home practiced a form of paganism deeply connected to the natural world. Their god Wodan, later known as Odin in Norse mythology, was often depicted as a hunter, accompanied by supernatural stags. But there was another deity, less well known, but perhaps more relevant to our story, Cernunnos, the horned god, adopted by Germanic tribes from their Celtic neighbours. Cernunnos was depicted as a man with stag antlers, a guardian of the forest and the underworld. Roman writers, including Pliny the Elder, recorded that Germanic priests would don elaborate headdresses made from stag skulls during certain rituals. These ceremonies, performed during the autumn equinox and winter solstice, were said to blur the boundaries between human and animal, living and dead. Dr. Helena Kaufmann from the University of Göttingen has spent 15 years studying pre-Christian religious sites in the Teutoburg forest. Her team has identified 13 stone circles hidden deep within the forest, each showing evidence of repeated ritualistic use spanning from approximately 500 BC to well into the 11th century AD, long after the region's official conversion to Christianity. At one site, designated TF7 in academic papers, ground-penetrating radar revealed something extraordinary. Beneath the stone circle lies a mass grave containing both human and animal remains, specifically red deer, arranged in a deliberate pattern. Carbon dating places these burials across multiple time periods, with the most recent dating to 1743, suggesting these pagan practices continued in secret for over a millennium after Christianity supposedly eliminated them. But here's what Dr. Kaufmann's team didn't publish in their academic papers, information that only came to light through leaked internal emails. In 2019, while excavating at TF7, 3 team members reported simultaneous sightings of a large stag watching them from the forest edge. When they tried to photograph it, all 3 cameras, 2 DSLRs and 1 smartphone, experienced simultaneous battery failure, despite being fully charged moments before. How does modern technology fail in the face of ancient power? The Teutoburg forest has become a hotspot for what paranormal researchers call electromagnetic anomalies. Since 2018, the German telecommunications company Deutsche Telekom has received over 300 complaints about service disruptions in specific areas of the forest, areas that correlate precisely with ancient ritual sites and modern Hirschgeist sightings. The phenomena follow a pattern. GPS units don't just lose signal, they actively provide false information, leading hikers in circles or showing positions hundreds of meters from their actual location. Digital cameras experience file corruption at rates 400% higher than statistical norms. Most unsettling, emergency beacons, devices designed with multiple redundancies, fail at critical moments. In October 2022, a search and rescue operation for missing hiker Jennifer Walsh revealed the extent of these technological failures. Walsh, an experienced outdoorswoman with military navigation training, became lost on a marked trail she had hiked dozens of times before. Her GPS beacon showed her stationary at a location where rescuers found nothing but her abandoned backpack. Her phone, discovered 500 meters away, contained a final video. The 40-second clip shows Walsh filming herself, explaining she's been walking in circles for hours, following trail markers that seem to move. At the 31-second mark, something large moves in the background, a dark shape with what appears to be antlers. Walsh doesn't seem to notice it, but her phone's autofocus does, shifting dramatically to try to capture the figure. The video ends with Walsh saying, "It's calling me deeper," before the file corrupts. Walsh was found 12 hours later, unconscious but unharmed, 3 kilometers from any established trail. She had no memory of the previous 8 hours and showed signs of exposure despite the mild autumn weather. Medical examination revealed something peculiar. Her body temperature was several degrees below normal, yet she showed no signs of hypothermia. Brain scans revealed unusual activity in her temporal lobe, patterns consistent with temporal lobe epilepsy, yet Walsh had no history of neurological disorders. What do the Saxon legends tell us about the forest's guardian? Local folklore, passed down through generations of Saxon families, speaks of Der Wächter des Waldes, the guardian of the forest. Unlike the romanticized nature spirits of modern paganism, this entity was something to be feared and appeased. According to legend, the Hirschgeist appears to those who carry violence in their hearts, those whose bloodlines trace back to the invaders of old, not just Romans, but Franks, French, and others who sought to conquer these lands. It manifests as judgment incarnate, testing the intentions of those who enter its domain. The Zimmermann Chronicle, a collection of local histories compiled by the Zimmermann family over 3 centuries, contains 17 separate accounts of Hirschgeist encounters between 1596 and 1889. The descriptions remain consistent: a white or pale grey stag of impossible size, with antlers that branch in patterns that hurt to perceive, as if they extend into dimensions the human eye cannot properly process. One account from 1742 describes how Johann Zimmermann, hunting in the forest despite warnings from village elders, encountered the creature at dawn. His written testimony, preserved in the family archive, reads, "The beast stood before me, tall as a house, its eyes holding the weight of centuries. When it moved not as one creature, but as many. I saw it stand in multiple places at once, as if time itself bent around its form. It spoke without words, filling my mind with images of battles I had not fought, blood I had not spilled, yet somehow my soul recognized as my inheritance." Johann survived his encounter, but never hunted again. His descendants note he would wake screaming about the horns that grow through time until his death 14 years later. Why are military records from World War II still classified? Perhaps the most intriguing modern element of the Hirschgeist legend comes from World War II. Declassified documents from both Allied and Axis forces reference something codenamed Operation Service, conducted by the SS Ahnenerbe, Heinrich Himmler's occult research division, in the Teutoburg forest during the winter of 1944. The operation's stated goal was to harness the ancient protective forces of the German forest against the Allied invasion. What exactly they attempted remains classified, but partial records indicate the involvement of 3 archaeologists, 2 folklore specialists, and surprisingly, a quantum physicist from the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. What we do know from declassified Allied intelligence reports is that in December 1944, an entire SS unit, approximately 30 men, disappeared in the Teutoburg forest during Operation Service. They were never found. Local witnesses reported seeing strange lights in the forest and hearing what they described as hunting horns that seemed to come from underground on the night of the disappearance. British intelligence officer Captain William Hartley, investigating the site in May 1945, wrote in his official report, "Found evidence of an extensive ritual site, recently used. Multiple stag skulls arranged in geometric patterns. Significant electromagnetic interference preventing proper photography. Recommend immediate classification and restricted access." Hartley's personal journal, donated to the Imperial War Museum after his death in 1987, contains an additional detail omitted from his official report. "Saw it myself at dawn. A white stag, massive beyond comprehension, watching from the ridge. When I raised my field glasses, it was gone, but I could still feel it watching. The local guide refused to enter the forest after that, said the Hirschgeist had marked me." Nonsense, of course. Yet, I find myself dreaming of antlers that pierce the sky, and I wake with the taste of ancient blood in my mouth. What patterns connect historical accounts to modern encounters? When we analyze the documented encounters with the Hirschgeist across 5 centuries, disturbing patterns emerge. The sightings cluster around specific dates: the autumn equinox, the anniversary of the Varian disaster in September, and notably during periods of social upheaval or impending conflict. Dr. Marcus Riedel, a data analyst and cryptozoology enthusiast, has compiled a database of over 200 reported encounters. His analysis reveals that 73% of witnesses share specific genetic markers associated with Indo-European migration patterns, essentially descendants of either Roman colonists or the Germanic tribes that fought them. The remaining 27% show markers linked to later invasive populations, Napoleonic forces, World War-era combatants. Even more intriguingly, witnesses report similar after-effects regardless of era. Recurring dreams of ancient battles they never fought, the sensation of being watched in forests far from Germany, and an unexplainable aversion to venison that often lasts their entire lives. The modern sightings show an acceleration. From 1990 to 2000, there were 4 documented encounters. From 2000 to 2010, 17. From 2010 to 2020, 41. And in the past 5 years alone, we've recorded 33 encounters. An exponential increase that correlates with increased political tensions in Europe and the rise of ultranationalist movements across the continent. Environmental scientists offer a different explanation. Climate change and urban development have pushed wildlife into closer contact with humans. But this fails to explain the technological anomalies, the consistent descriptions across centuries, or the fact that no physical evidence of such a creature, no bones, antlers, or DNA traces, has ever been found despite extensive searching. What happens when ancient curses meet modern investigation? In 2021, a team of paranormal investigators from the Munich Institute for Anomalous Phenomena spent 3 weeks in the Teutoburg forest with state-of-the-art equipment. Their investigation, funded by a documentary production company, aimed to either prove or definitively debunk the Hirschgeist legend. The team included thermal imaging specialists, audio engineers capable of detecting infrasound, and a biologist specializing in cervid behavior. They established base camp at the exact coordinates where the highest number of sightings had been reported, a clearing near the Externstein rock formation, a site sacred to pagans for millennia. For 2 weeks, nothing happened beyond standard forest sounds and wildlife activity. Then, on the night of the autumn equinox, their equipment began registering anomalies. Thermal cameras detected a heat signature moving through the trees. Something large, bipedal at times, quadrupedal at others. The signature's temperature fluctuated impossibly, reading as both Arctic cold and fever hot within seconds. audio equipment captured what the team described as structured infrasound, frequencies below human hearing that formed repeating patterns, almost like language. When they attempted to track the source, team members reported experiencing severe vertigo, temporal disorientation, and what one described as memories that weren't mine. I could see Roman soldiers dying, but from the perspective of something watching from the trees. The investigation's final night brought the encounter they'd been seeking. At 3:47 a.m., all 4 team members simultaneously witnessed what they described in their official report as a cervid entity of non-standard dimensions. The creature stood approximately 4 meters tall at the shoulder, with antlers that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. They hurt to perceive directly. Lead investigator Dr. Sarah Voigt attempted to approach the entity. According to her testimony, as she moved closer, time seemed to dilate. She reported experiencing the forest's entire history in moments, watching the trees grow from saplings, seeing countless battles, witnessing rituals performed across centuries. When she finally reached where the creature had stood, she found only a small pile of Roman coins, dated to 9 AD, that carbon dating confirmed as authentic, despite showing no signs of age or weathering. The team's footage from that night exists, but remains problematic. The digital files show severe corruption, but what can be seen appears to show something that violates basic laws of physics, an entity that exists in multiple positions simultaneously, antlers that extend beyond the frame in impossible directions, eyes that reflect light that isn't there. The Teutoburg forest keeps its secrets well. Whether the Hirschgeist is a guardian spirit born from ancient ritual, a temporal anomaly created by the massive loss of life in 9 AD, or something else entirely, it continues to walk between the trees, watching, waiting, judging those who enter its domain. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Perhaps some forests aren't meant to be entered without understanding the weight of history that soaks into their soil. The Hirschgeist remains out there, in the mists of the Teutoburg forest. A reminder that ancient powers don't simply die because we stop believing in them. They evolve, they adapt, they wait. Thank you for joining me in the shadows of history today on The Haunted Lore. If you've experienced something unexplainable in an ancient forest, or if you have a legend from your corner of the world that deserves investigation, let us know in the comments. Subscribe to The Haunted Lore wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep one foot in history and one eye on the shadows. This is The Haunted Lore, signing off.